So the understanding of the interaction of the cycle of buy, grow, exit is what I call the secret sauce to building a business that can be leveraged. So at exit, there's substantial value, or this is not all about exit. This also might be about building a business that allows the owners to have more of an investor role of the business rather than being, this hands-on, in the business, in the weeds sort of business owner. So when I talk about valued exit, I guess it's not just all about exit, but it's about making sure the business owner has those options to either stay in the business as an investor and have a business that's strong and has value, or if there's a reason that they need to exit. And, these reasons can happen to business owners at any point, even if they've not planned for it. You have business owners who are sick, who have things happen to them, their life changes, life events change, and they suddenly find that they need to exit their business. So it's all about putting them in that position of strength. Of course, you do that from a systems perspective, and we do that from a legal infrastructure systems perspective. Okay, and I also like to talk about where today's growth produces not just today's gains, but also feeding into increasing the underlying value of the asset along the way. And this is the one sort of key message I feel that we need to get to SMEs. It's that, and I'm sure it aligns with the sort of messages that you're talking about in the market as well. It's that the things that you do today are not just about what you're building today, but it's really the decisions that you're making today that will have an impact 10 years down the track. And that's what business owners need to be thinking about. And it's this importance for all of us to help keep bringing them back to that 10,000 foot perspective, rather than them sitting in the weeds of every day without thinking about the small decisions that they're making along the way that impact them 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And that's essentially the whole concept of Buy, Grow, Exit, the book. I like to talk about two different clients that I've had over the years to explain this difference. And Ted was a client and James was a client. I've worked with both of these clients many years ago, but both of them had very, very, very different outcomes of their business and really shaped a lot of my views on the importance that we have as advisors in working with our clients and the difference that we can make in their lives. So Ted is an example. He's a fabulous example of an entrepreneur who started with nothing. He came out to Australia with absolutely nothing as an immigrant from Italy, and he grew up on a small property in Western Australia. Started, as I said, with absolutely nothing but like the clothes on his back that he came with. And over 40 years, he built this business. But he built this business with a concept of systems and processes. He built the business with the concept of what would be in a buyer's mind ultimately when I got to the point of selling the business. And he, as we prepared his business for sale, it became very clear that because he had run his business in a way that meant that the value in the business sat in the systems and processes and in his staff and the way that he built that information, knowledge in the staff, his business became extremely attractive to buyers. He had 5 buyers to choose from, and he was able ultimately to get a price that far exceeded what he thought he'd get from the business. And he got to choose who his buyer was and the terms of the sale. Because the thing is, when you get to the sale of your business, it's not just about the price, it's also about the terms, how long you're going to be held into the business, whether there's an earn out, whether there's risk to the amount that you'll earn ultimately in that exit of the business. So he ended up selling out to a corporate buyer, and corporate buyers are quite often buyers who will pay the most for a business, but they will only pay the most if the business is set up or organised in a way that the value transfers, they can take the systems and processes and start running the business from day one without there being this vulnerability on the owner-founder role in order to make the business continue to operate in the way it had prior to sale, if that makes sense. So Ted was this fabulous example. There's always a few hiccups along the way, but because he had prepared the business really well in advance, he got a great sale outcome, and I keep in contact with him today, and he sends me pictures of like his new holiday home on the Margaret River, and his international holidays and all of those fabulous things that we all that business owners dream of, I guess, filling up their retirement. And so that's Ted. And then on the flip side is James. So James came from a very similar beginning as Ted. James was in the building and construction industry, and he had set up a marvelous business, just like Ted had set up a marvelous business. James, just like Ted, had understood the importance of building a management team, building this sort of business where you can step out of the business and the management team runs the business. So far they'd approached it in similar ways. The difference between Ted and James was that Ted had set the business up with a management team, but backed by systems and processes and a strong legal infrastructure, so that when issues hit the business, he had advance warning of the issues that were coming, and he was in a strong position to deal with them. The issue with James, building a very similar type of business, starting from a very similar position, and having a similar outlook, he had this position where he'd sort of extricated himself from the business. He'd put a manager in place, but he had then essentially abdicated rather than delegating by having the systems and processes in the business that would underpin ultimately the protection of the business when it goes through the normal storms of business. Every business will at some point hit rough waters. The question is how each business deals with it. And so what happened with James's business is he'd appointed this manager, he'd stepped back, but then the manager hadn't been on top of collections and cash flow, and hadn't been on top of ensuring that they didn't have too much of a key client risk. The key client held a large component of the revenue in their business, and hit financial troubles themselves, stopped paying. There wasn't enough money in cash reserves. And it was at that point that James suddenly realised, when James suddenly had to step back in because he realised there wasn't enough cash in the business, they were being harassed by suppliers because they were paying late, that something was wrong. As soon as he realised something was wrong, he came in and he walked into our legal firm. I was a junior lawyer at the time, and he engaged our firm to help him, but it was too late because there were no systems in place in terms of debt collection, in terms of the warning signals. The suppliers were chasing him hard. This client didn't have the money to pay right at that point, and it was too late to apply the legal pressure needed. And James made the decision, in accordance with his accountant at the time, to put the company into liquidation. Then soon after that, he went into personal bankruptcy. And then he came and he visited me, and I was a junior lawyer at this time. There was nothing that I could do to help him at this point, but I just remember this meeting so clearly. He came into the office and he was in tears, and he told me that, obviously his business had collapsed. He was in bankruptcy. His wife had left him because of the stress in the family. This sort of financial pressure creates a massive amount of stress. And he'd started receiving death threats from his suppliers, which, had just sent him into complete meltdown. And I just thought, as I reflected, as I grew my understanding of law, as I grew my understanding of what makes a successful business at exit, what makes this horror story that James was going through, it occurred to me that, we have such an important role with our clients to help them understand the absolute critical importance of them understanding how to build the protection in their business, how to build these early warning signs, how to build the systems and the processes. Number one, to ensure that you ward off the issues, but number two, to enable you to have visibility early into the issues. Because the concept of James putting in place a manager, wanting to step down a bit, was not dissimilar to Ted. You know, they both wanted the same things, but they went about it in two different ways. And this is where the opportunity is for us in making a massive difference to people's lives. And I, you know, I decided years later, reflecting back on these experiences, that we as advisors are the ones who sit in the role of being able to help provide insight as to how they can be Ted, not James. And that's what you are all doing in helping your clients build systems, but also it is about understanding how building systems that sit in outside of business operations, legal systems, the legal infrastructure, as well as the financial and accounting systems and infrastructure, are also a critical part of all of those systems working together. And so that was a bit of a long introduction, but I just thought it was really important for me to convey these real stories, because these are real stories, these are real business owners' lives, and they're really important elements at the end of the day.